On our journey to El Salvador, pursuing our entrepreneurial ambitions, we've made so many mistakes,
A lot.
but also have learned so many lessons. And today, that's what we're going to share with you. We're just two entrepreneurs. I'm Michael Ruiz.
And I'm Jordan Herbs. And we just finished our podcast studio down here in El Salvador, and we started it from the ground up. Literally did our first episodes on a fold out picnic table, and now we have paint on the walls. I guess we're not completely finished. We still have a logo to make a sign for, but it's been a super adventure. We're finally ready to focus on offers and growth and building a business. If you're an entrepreneur, builder, or creator, or you're really just a human, these are all very important mindset development principles that work for everyone. So there's going to be a lot of little nuggets to put into your tool chest for life. We're going to go over these 8 principles we've put into practice this far that brought us here today. They can work for anybody, anywhere, doing anything.
Yeah, we're going to introduce these principles and share our experience with them and how it's got us this far and out here building in El Salvador. So it's been fun, interesting, challenging time, and just really enjoyable. Also,
At times frustrating.
frustrating. That's the word I was looking for. Experience, and it's still frustrating, and it's still challenging, and we're still employing a lot of these principles to this day. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over them, and we're going to discuss how we've interacted with them and how we've employed them. And that way, if you're a builder out there, or if you're thinking about going down an entrepreneurial journey or a creative journey, maybe some of this will help you on your endeavors. And the first principle is trial and error, right? Learning by trial and error, learning by iterations, just going through the motions, and getting feedback, and then using that feedback to improve.
Right. And that kind of applies to anything in life, right? You got
Hmm.
to just go through it. But I think a lot of times we don't want to experience failure, so we avoid error. So we avoid trial and error, really. We just
We
think,
avoid trying
yeah, like
altogether.
I'm just going to keep researching, I'm going to keep learning until I know I'll do it perfectly. But really the most informative and enlightening thing you can do to learn is just by going for it, just doing it.
Yeah, and you got to be okay with making mistakes, sometimes costly mistakes. One of the things that I realized putting this studio together, right? We bought a lot of equipment for the studio, and some of that equipment was the wrong equipment. Some of that equipment is not being utilized. But I already took an approach where, in my mindset, I put a buffer for mistakes because I knew that we would make plenty. Right? This is kind of my first hurrah with actually building out a studio. I know Jordan and Matthias, you probably have more experience than I do, but I just knew that, you know, I got to give myself some leeway and some cushion for mistakes to occur. And we just need to move forward, right? And I can't think too much about decisions because you're going to get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? And
Forever.
yeah. And so, okay, we think that this is going to work. Let's just go for it and see what happens. And sometimes it wasn't the right decision to make. But that's okay, right? Because at least we're moving forward, and at least we're using that feedback to get better.
Yeah, and when you're coming from the US like we are, when you're building a house or working on the bathroom or the plumbing or whatever, you go to Home Depot, you would normally buy extra of everything you need, PVC, nails, whatever. You buy extra and then return it later because you can. But because most of our equipment came from Amazon.com and we're in another country where Amazon does not exist, then yeah, we gotta eat it.
Yeah, and you just got to be okay with that, right? So you already know that these are sunk costs that are part of the operational expense. That's just how it is going to be, and so nothing's going to be perfect. You're going to have waste, and that's just the way it is, and you got to be okay with that. And so it's developing that mindset to already incorporate that into your whole thought process.
Right. And then yeah. And so that leads us to our next principle, which is embracing setbacks or failure as feedback. And we've kind of already touch this a
Yeah,
bit?
they're all kind of related in a sense. Trial and error, incremental improvements that lead to big outcomes. Actually, we can go over that a little bit more, right? Where over here, what I focus on is just getting one big task done a day, right? And then the way I think about it is over the course of a month, that's 30 big tasks that have been done. We're going to get so far. Those are 30 key steps that have been taken, right? And so if we just focus on that, um, then we should be way ahead in a month. And it's also keeping that long-term perspective in mind too as you're doing this. But the idea is that these small baby steps, they're going to compound over time, right? And that compounding effect is going to give you big returns. And I don't know exactly the um the way this is phrased or whether this math is correct, but it's something along these lines where it's like 1% better makes you 37 times better in a year. 1% better in a day makes you 37 times better in a year.
Well, if you look at any graph of a compounding return, it's insane. It's like, what is it called? Not exponential. What is it? Logarithmic, or like you see it and then like it's a little, it's a little, it's a little until it's suddenly a lot.
Yeah, it
And
hits an inflection point.
I've been reading The Slight Edge
Mhm.
by, oh, I'm sorry, I forget the author, but I've been reading that. And the second chapter is all about compounding returns and this 1% better idea. And the idea here, I mean, we're talking about building a business, right? So, like, every day it's like, what's one big task we can take care of to bring this business forward? But it also works on an individual scale for just becoming a more optimized human. Like, how can we be better versions of ourselves? And so this example he gives in the story, which is essentially to prove the point, like just read 10 pages of a self-development book every day and look how, imagine a few years from now, how much you'll have accomplished. But this story he put in this book blew my mind because when you think about, you have to actually do the math to actually see it. But basically this father gave his two sons options for an inheritance. One, they can just take $1 million right now and go. Okay. Or they can take one penny, but every day it's going to double. Whatever's in that basket that starts with one penny is going to double every day. Do you know how much money with one penny doubles in 30 days? Do you know how much money that turns into?
No.
Millions of
Really?
dollars. Yeah. You can't. And I did the math yesterday because I read it and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And then I was like, no way. It just can't be. And I did the math. And like, it's a little, it's a little, it's a little until suddenly in week 4, you're at the tens of thousands of dollars mark. And
Mhm.
suddenly you're passing 1 million, 2 million, and that
Wow.
keeps doubling.
So that really drives home the point of the compounding effect, right?
Yep. And I mean, you could, yeah, sure. You can look at the graph and see it. But for me, doing that math, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's insane.
And there's also something about doing the reps, right? Where it's challenging at first, but you do enough of them and it just becomes kind of like muscle memory, right? And so that's one thing that you don't even have to think about. You don't have to put much effort, mental effort, physical effort into doing once it's kind of ingrained into your whole routine, right? And so that opens up space for you to do other things, right? And that's part of the compounding effect. Now you've become much more capable at doing a myriad of things versus having to put all your concentration and effort in just one thing, right? Eventually, you develop the skill set, and then you can move on to other things.
Hormozy had a post about this recently. Like, when you're young, focus on getting in shape because then you can just maintain for the rest of your life and focus on other things. And I
Yeah.
think about, like, I started getting in shape and exercising at like 13 years old, right? So for me, it's always just been there. Thanks,
Mhm.
dad. But like,
Mhm.
imagine if you're 30 and you've never really valued exercise before because you were never introduced to it or whatever. And then you try to get in shape. Like, it's going to take a long time. Like, the older you get, the harder it is to like get in shape. So it's the same thing with, like, I journal every night, right? And I've gone through times where I didn't journal for a few years. I didn't have a notebook, and I would be like, "Oh man, I need to get back into my nightly reflections." And I just recognize how much more clear my mind can be before bed if I just spend 5 to 10 minutes writing in my little diary by my bed every night. It doesn't have to be anything substantial. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but the results are amazing. And then it clears my head for a better sleep and for a more, I guess, organized routine in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, these little incremental improvements, man, they really like can change the trajectory of your life if you just focus on that.
And you take it to a new you take it to so you do weekly plans, you do daily plans too. You actually write them down, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've still not been able to nail that. Maybe it's just because of, having young kids at this point, but, like, that's, like, next on my list. I've had spells where I could take like, I've done it, like, for, like, a couple weeks, like, cool, like, I'm being super organized, like, The One Thing by Gary Keller, right? It's
Mhm.
like, write out your goals, like, your 20-year goal, and then 5 years from now, what do you need to accomplish in order to accomplish that someday goal? And then 1 year from now, what do you need to have accomplished to get to that 5-year goal? 1 month from now, what do you need to do? It's like getting so organized with your goals and what needs to happen to accomplish those goals down to the hour. Like right now, what do I need to do to follow the chain to that one day, 20 years from now goal?
Yeah. And speaking of about that, right? Like, let me tell you something. I never in my life was able to, write out a plan and stick to it until I consciously decided to put effort into it. So I wanted to get to my 40th birthday, right? In the best physical, spiritual, mental health I've ever been. Right. And so that was a goal that I set for myself like 3 months before my 40th birthday, which was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And so I put together this challenge for myself. And then I opened this challenge to Twitter and called it the Strongman Challenge, right? From taking from the idea of that strongman create good times. It's kind of like that inspiration. Like I need to level up. This was during the time of COVID too, where it was just felt like we were going into hard times, and that's when I consciously put effort into like focusing on habits that are going to improve my life and then tracking those habits and coming up with a plan and following that plan through. And so I've been doing that for a year and a half now or a little bit over that. And this is why I'm able to create a plan now with no problem because
Mm.
it's already been ingrained into me. I put focused concentration on actually doing it every day. And it was hard at first. And there were times where I stumbled. There were times where I, had a slump. But I always kind of just tried to revert back to that mean, right? Where it was like, okay, now sit down, concentrate, focus on a plan, track your habits, decide what you're going to do, and then have the discipline to do it. And over time, that muscle just got built. And now to the point where I can wake up in the morning and just do the same thing every day, write out a plan, know what I'm doing. And let me tell you, when you take a goal, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about too, one of the principles, when you take a goal and you break it down into smaller steps and you write those steps out, right? It gives you a clear roadmap on the actions that you need to take. And so now you can actually think forward into the future and plan your life around what you want and then put together action steps to go after it and follow through. And now you're manifesting your reality. You know what I mean? What you think about actually comes to fruition. Like even this whole podcast studio that we're in now, even here being in El Salvador, it all started with a vision, right? And then it was just working on that vision, chipping away at it every day for the past, what, 6, 7 months. And here we are. We're living on the same street. We got a team that's currently being built out and more people are joining. And it's like, oh wow, if you actually put effort towards your goals, uh, they can transpire. Like, and the more that you do it, the more that you believe, and then all of a sudden your goals get bigger, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, what can I achieve in this life, right? And that's when the real fun starts happening.
It's a really interesting topic because there's a lot of people that, talk about like manifestation and let's manifest it. And like for me, being someone that was definitely a part of that new age culture for a while, I never got the like do the hard work and reps part, right? I got the like, yes, if you believe it and have the vision and like keep it in the forefront of your consciousness, like it will happen one day. And I do believe to an extent that is real, right? That is real. But there's something about doing the actual work, like we said, incremental improvements lead to big outcomes. And then when you break these big tasks into smaller steps, you're able to actually start seeing like visualizing the goal, whether you're writing it down or drawing it or whatever, you're actually organizing it, you're strategizing it, and then you're like literally just walking the path to making that thing happen. So it's like, sure, we can like believe in magic or whatever and go like, yeah, I'm God, I'm the universe experiencing itself subjectively, so I get what I want because I create it. But the reality is we have this agency to just do things. And so when we have the vision, the big idea, the creativity, the creative inspiration, here we are, we just use our action to get there. And we're, it doesn't, you don't need to be like highly intellectual or whatever to just think about, to just sit and think, okay, this is what I want. How can I get there? It
Yes.
requires some patience. It requires some humility, right? Which are things I lacked in those days too. I'm like, no, I just want that and I want it to come. Like I've been working on a reflection about it for my newsletter. It's like I always wanted to. I didn't want to just like get wealthy. I didn't want to work to get wealthy. I wanted it to be magic, and then I wanted to be the wealthiest. Right? I wanted to be the most powerful person. I didn't want to be somewhere in the middle. Like, what's the point? I'd rather just be broke and not have to do the hard work. And so, like, there's all these really important steps to getting what you want in any capacity at any scale. And it all starts right here, right now. Where do I start? What are the big tasks need to get done? How do I separate that into smaller steps to do it?
Yeah. And here's the thing about taking action and then moving towards your goal, because this is a critical part of it too, is, you know, your confidence and your belief starts to take shape, right? And I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to be more specific. It's like the more you do, the more you believe that you can do, right? And so
Because you're seeing the results, you're
exactly.
experiencing the results firsthand.
Exactly. And then here's the thing about tracking my habits and tracking all the stuff that I do on a daily basis. It's like that's your proof right there, right? Like you have a whole mountain of proof that you can do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
And so all of a sudden you're like, "Oh wait, one of my friends Neil, um he's in my personal development group. Um he calls it, oh, I forgot the name of the Jonas pause, right? And it's this idea of, man, I'm butchering this, but it just came to my mind. But there's basically this head, right? And this head looks forward and it looks backwards. And I think it's what January is named after. It's like Janus, or and I don't know if it's a Greek god or what it is, but he calls it the Janus pause, where you take a second and like sometimes we have to look back how far we've come, because as men, especially as men, we can
Mm.
be super hard on ourselves in the present moment. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. Oh, I messed up here. You're such an idiot. But, if you take a step back and you just pause and you look at how far you've come, right? You can use that as motivation and fuel to keep on going, right? And so it's the pause that you look back, you see how far you've come, now you look forward and plow ahead.
Yeah, when difficult times come, it can be easy to slide into the conditioning, the programming we have, like literally programming in our brain to be like, oh, this happened. I am a failure. Like, I knew it. Like I was on this path to be successful, but then this happened. I am a failure. And he talked about this in the Slight Edge also. It's like we're constantly on in this spectrum, right? Of like survival, success, or survival and failure, right? And survival's in the middle, and we go up and down. And what separates people from success and failure is when you're about to hit success, you get a setback, and then you just you follow that programming back down into failure, and then you're starting over.
Hmm.
So like a tough time happens, and like lately, what's been working for me really well is like literally like God, source, whatever you want to call a higher power out there, has put everything in front of my life to be like, no, you don't have any excuses anymore. You have everything. You are blessed. Like something comes your way, I don't, Jordan, you cannot be distracted by this.
Hmm.
Like you can handle it. And like I have to remind myself of that and zoom out. Like you said, look back. Look
Hmm.
at everything I've done to get here. Look what's in front of me right now. Look how beautiful this present moment is. Like
You just reminded me of something. Sometimes, like the opportunities that are getting presented to us is like it's almost intimidating, right? It's so good, it's almost intimidating, and you're gonna be like, man, it's like I don't even know if I should go down that route.
what's the catch?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But and it's because it's like, wow, if I go down this route, like it's also gonna require a lot of me, right? I'm gonna have to work a lot harder. I'm gonna have to be a lot more focused. I'm gonna have to be a lot more disciplined. And now you're presented with the question is like, all right, am I ready for this success?
That's what life is all about.
Yeah.
Is like you reach this new pinnacle, you reach this new peak, and then there's another one. And sure, we can decide, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. But I would imagine that,
We're not there yet.
well, I mean, maybe there's something in our physiology, right? Your testosterone levels start going down when you get older. I don't know, where you're just like, okay, I'm done. I'm done, and I'm just gonna chill now. We don't know what that is, what that
Well,
feels like.
that I mean, it's just the phases of life, right? Maybe we just get to a sage phase where we're like, yeah, you know what? It's time for me to be a teacher. It's time for me to, pass on the knowledge that I have acquired. Like, I'm just not the grind isn't in me anymore, right? And that's okay, right? And so like you take on a new challenge in the sense that you become a sage and you become a wise elder, and you pass down all the knowledge that you've learned over the years through your endeavors, through your adventures to the younger generation so they can take the baton and keep on going.
Yeah, so in like Vedic Hindu philosophy, there is probably lots of philosophies, but there's this notion that's related to Ayurveda where you got like these three main phases of your life. And the first one is you're essentially just learning to use the bathroom, right? You're learning about life, right? That's when you're a kid. Like I think about my 20s. Yes, I had like greater ambitions and I had dreams and stuff, but I didn't really care to build anything, right? It was all about me. It was about exploring myself and using those things to get to know myself better. Now I'm hitting my 30s, and in this philosophy, it's 30s till you're, roughly 60s. That's when you build. That's when you do it. That's fire, right? The
Mhm.
first is air, where you're floating and you're more learning about yourself. Then it's fire. It's like, boom, let's go. And that's when you build your wealth. You have a family, you have a home, you're really stable. And then that last phase, it's earth. That's when you drop it all because it never mattered to begin with, but you went through the experience and you learned what you needed to learn. You provided the value you're supposed to you were meant to provide, and now, like you said, you become the sage, you become the teacher. You drop it all to go meditate and help others meditate or whatever it is.
Gain enlightenment.
Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, do you really help anyone gain enlightenment? Like that's all you, right?
Mhm.
That's always a personal thing. But like the saying goes, like when the teacher is ready, the student appears,
Okay,
or when
gotcha.
the student is ready, the teacher appears. So it's like cool. I've accomplished all my goals. My children are out of the house.
Mhm.
It's like now, like, is it, especially when we're talking about the physiology, right? As men get older, it's true. The testosterone goes down, ambition goes down. Like we don't know what that's like because we're still young.
Mhm.
But it's like at that point, your values change. I mean, I think about my values changing now, like simply going from my 20s to 30s is the simplest way to put it. I'm just
Sure.
like, wow, I have such different priorities now. And it changes my diet, it changes my lifestyle, it changes everything I do from a day to day basis. And that's okay. I'm not trying to stay attached to who I was, but the same thing is probably going to happen in another couple decades. And I need to remember not to be attached to what I've been doing.
Yeah, I just see it as seasons, right? I see, yeah, it's a similar concept, It's the idea that we just go through seasons in our lives. And so right now, the season that I'm in is one of it's one of building. I'm high energy. I'm up early in the morning, 5:30 a.m. I'm ready to get right after it, I'm organized and I'm focused on building. And so it's like that's the season I'm in. And it's learning to embrace those seasons, and then you have, like, mini seasons within seasons, right? Where it's like and I try to become aware of it. That's another big part of it, right? Is like when becoming aware of your thoughts, of your moods, of your energy, uh, and then harnessing that what 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 is revealed through that awareness, right? So there's sometimes where I'm like, I don't want to read every day, or I'm just not in the mood. I'm in the mood to create. I'm in the mood to build. I'm in the mood to work on a different project or something like that, right? And it's like, oh, okay. I think I'm in a different season now. So I'm just like, I know that I'll get back to that, right? I know that the season for reading will come back into the picture. But let me embrace this right now because I know that this is also a crucial part in me moving the business forward or in me moving forward with my goals. And let me not fight it, right? Like unless it's something that I really have to do or it's really like crucial or there's urgency attached to it, right? Then you just, you grind, you find the willpower and you grind through. But in terms of just kind of embracing the ebbs and flows of your mood, of your energy, like you got to cultivate an awareness, and that goes also into your mindset too, right? We talk about the negative thought patterns and the downward spiral that can emerge, uh, especially when we get hard on ourselves and we become our biggest critic. We can really beat ourselves up, and so it's like you know when you become aware of how you're talking to yourself, you're like, "Oh man, I'm really like hard on myself. I wouldn't even say these things to someone I didn't like, and but this is how
Yeah.
I talk to myself."
Yeah.
And so it's like becoming aware of how you talk to yourself, and then having a set a mindset or a set of thoughts that you can replace those negative thoughts with, you know? And this is something that I've constantly had to do as we make mistakes here on this journey, as things, you know, go awry or not according to plan. Um, you know, I start going through a negative thought pattern and I'm like, no, 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 no. I'll revert back to a mantra or something like that. You know, just like one mantra that just comes off the top of my head, which I think everyone could relate to. It's really popular. Is like the obstacle is the way, right? When things get hard, it's like, no, it's hard because that's the way you're supposed to go. Right. And so I'll just replace these negative thoughts with little mantras in order to plow me through the resistance that's there, you know, and those negative thought patterns that have emerged.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like as important as things might be to whatever, move your business forward, the goal should be to live in peace and just be peaceful, right? Like, who wants to be stressed out? And I learned that, it took me a long time to learn. Like, if I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like working out, I work out every morning, right? Because that's how I have a good day. That's how who I am. And if I wake up one day and it's just like not the day to do it, like I'll just take that day off, right? And sometimes I'll remember why I do it, right? This is why I work out every morning because this has been a rough day now. Other days, like it's fine, and I actually have a great morning. I do something different, right? But it's the same thing when something's coming up and there's resistance, and I'm like, okay, well, what is the resistance here for? Like, is it mental? Is it just not the day for that? You mentioned seasons earlier, and seasons are a really important thing for me. I mean, we can talk about seasons like there's 4 seasons a year, but you got seasons within a moon cycle, and women experience this very directly, right? Every 28 days, they got different seasons leading into what happens. You got seasons, like you got cosmological seasons with different planets rotating. Like there's a lot of cosmological seasons going on that are affecting us in different ways. I mean, there's a season every day when the sun goes down and comes back up. It's the season to sleep, it's a season to be awake, right? So all these things are things to take into account. Like during winter, I am much less active with building things. Like I'm much more introspective. I'm much more reflective, and the work I do is a lot more personal. But then we get into spring and everything's super excited. Remember when we were here in April, like having party stuff, like how much fire you and I had? Like that's springtime energy as far as I'm concerned. And now summer, this is the grind.
Hmm.
Like summer is the grind. And then fall is the harvest. It's
Hmm.
time to reap the rewards of everything we've been grinding towards. And then winter comes and it's time to just sit back. Okay, what did we learn? How are we going to do it better next time? Like cycles, season cycles, they're super important.
It's super important to be aware of them, aware of how you react to them, and then like leverage it. Learn how to leverage it to your advantage,
Learn how
right?
to leverage it and learn to discern whether it's resistance or just cyclical, right?
Sure.
Like, is this inner resistance making me not want to do the grind right now? Or is it just like not the time to do the grind right now?
Yeah, gotcha.
Which is what we got on here too. Leveraging people, leveraging resources. So back to our list, right? So asking for help.
Yeah, that's a big thing, and I don't have a problem with this actually. And I actually think it's one of my strong suits is like finding people to help me push the ball forward because you know one of the things that I realized listening to a lot of podcasts and reading books about successful entrepreneurs is that they couldn't have done it without the right people. They need people. You need people, right? Like to create a operation that's successful and just create great things in general. It's like that doesn't happen without a team. And so we wouldn't have got this far if it wasn't for young Matt.
Young Matt.
And and we did that. How do we do that? Like we purposely sought out people. We made that happen. We made that opportunity and that connection happen by creating a community call where people interested in what we're up to were welcome to come and join our community to call and talk to us. And that's how we met young Matt.
Which, by the way, we have one in 30 minutes. If you're watching live, you're going to get the link if you sign up to our newsletter.
Yeah.
Or is it on the community or the newsletter? Where's the link?
It's in the community. So how can we do this?
Well, just go to sovereigntystudios.com and
Yep.
sign up for the newsletter of the community. It's on our website, but you have to be subscribed to the newsletter to see the page.
Exactly. So go to sovereigntystudios.com and join the community. It's free. And that's where you can interact with Jordan, me, Matthias. And that's where we host our community calls and anything else that we do is all through the community.
Yeah, it's a lot more personal than Twitter and stuff
Yeah.
and this.
And so not only that, but like we have a studio here. And the studio is getting built out and it's getting
We
decorated.
hired a decorator.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hired a designer. And so it's like not being afraid to reach out, not being afraid to ask people for help and connect with people and have conversations and tell them what you're looking for. And people are more than willing to help you, man. It's wild how far people will go out of their way to help you. Like if they have like if they can tie their actions to a reason, right? And if they see that you're working hard, like that energy is contagious. And they're like, okay, I want to help this person on his path towards fulfilling his mission. Like people want to be a part of something always.
Well,
And
especially when it can be part of fulfilling their mission too.
yes, yes.
Yeah, and that's seasonal too, right? I have some seasons where I'd rather help someone else with a mission as opposed to like go on my own.
Hmm.
And that season's like, yeah, my mission is to support that person.
Yeah. And so, yeah, leveraging the right people to move you forward, especially in key aspects of your business or whatever mission you're on is super critical in my opinion. And then that's where we can get into like also communication, right? One of the things that I've had to work on and I've had to learn and I had to up my skill set is in communication, especially when we're working as a team. This is the first time I've worked with three people on a team in a way that wasn't driven by some type of corporate structure, right? We're all kind of like sovereign individuals, freelancers who doing our own thing, who are coming together to pool our talents in order to create something bigger than ourselves. And so it's like we also are all independent minded and we also have our own idiosyncrasies about us. And so
We don't have to censor ourselves like in the corporate environment.
yeah, but we have to communicate. We have to get on the same page. We have to make sure we understand each other and that we're operating, on a similar level. And that involves communication. So learning how to communicate, also understanding that we all have different personalities, and how to engage with someone based on their personality is a big deal that I've come to learn. And also giving people grace and leeway and understanding that we're human beings and we have our moods and we have our emotions, and you know the important part is that when there is any friction, when there is any disconnection, that it gets brought up right away and it gets discussed, but it gets discussed in a healthy manner. A-
Yeah.
And then also when you do things wrong, this is another one, right? Or when you know that you were in the wrong in a conversation, is to, have the humility to apologize or to go the extra mile to make sure that, uh, you know, any offense that was given, or if there were, yeah, just any wounds that were created, that you mend them.
Yeah, and to loop the communication aspect of this conversation into the main topic at hand here, which is essentially removing failure from your vocabulary, is like when you're in a team situation, especially when you're all in as a team, and it's like, okay, I got this responsibility, I'm doing this, blah blah, and then you realize you did something wrong. I know in my past would have been easy to think like, oh, I fucked everything up, like it's over, blah blah blah, and that's partly because I just wanted to avoid a hard conversation or to
Mm,
take responsibility or like admit something or whatever and then like revert to failure again, right? Like, oh, this is over. Or even if someone else fucked up and I was the leader, like, oh, this person fucked up, but I'm sick of bringing it up, right? Blah, 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 blah. And essentially going right back to where we started. But by really refining your communication, becoming more confident in authentic communication, being open and transparent, you can just bypass all of that and you just talk about things. And it may not be easy at first, at least, but then you just get comfortable.
sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of people have a hard time being vulnerable and have a hard time finding the humility to have those conversations, but it's a skill you can develop. I've developed it over the years. I was one of those people that was a horrible communicator.
Yeah, well, look at the society we come from.
Yeah.
Like we all have to relearn how to communicate at some point. I mean, look at the movies we watch, right? You know, like all the breakup movies or romantic movies where like you fight or whatever. It's like those are the role models we get,
Yeah,
you
even from
know?
cartoons, right? Whenever there was a
Yeah.
disagreement, it was like it turned into like a fight.
Yeah, instead of just like, hey, I'm feeling a certain way from what you said. Can we just sit and talk about it real quick? You know, like it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be blow up fight. It's just like,
Yeah.
hey, let's talk. It's real quick. And if it's a friend or a lover, like, oh, I hear you. Thanks for sharing that. And then you go from there. But
Yeah.
it's like we don't see that in movies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going we've been programmed by society to yeah, to not be
To
cooperative and
not be
collaborative.
good team players.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where, these are lessons that we've learned along the way, and things that we've had to improve upon. And you know, there's 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 another principle here that we can get to, which is
Well, I just wanted to say because we kind of got into it, but we didn't label it as such. But letting the process happen organically
yeah,
and surrendering, and even just faith, right? It's like we can't control it. This goes into the seasons, right? The season thing might be a more individual thing at times. It could also be a broader thing at times. Like there's certain things we're just not going to be able to control at all times. And it's like, okay, well, what can I control? Let's do that. Since
yeah.
that we obviously can't control those variables, but we can control these ones.
That's funny. That's a big one actually, because there's so much chaos happening right now around us. Okay, so we have an interior decorator who's
Oh
coming
yeah.
coming in and out of the house, and interrupting our workflow for sure. And then we have also workers, sometimes 5 to 10 workers going in and out of the house. We're getting a carport done here in the front, and then we're getting a deck and a what do you call that?
Patio
Yeah, patio deck and roof
overhang.
overhang
And we
put.
got grinders out there, skill saws growing. Like it's a construction zone.
And then not only that, but we're also in the process of still getting acclimated here to El Salvador. And so there's all things going on, man. If you've ever moved,
My kids aren't in school yet. I got to
yeah,
bring them to meet the decorator today.
all types of interruptions and all. And so, yeah, you, you know, embracing that, and also understanding that there are things that are just out of your control, and you're just going to have to roll with the punches. And that's okay. That's part of the process. And also, letting things going back to letting things happen organically, having faith that things will just work itself out is such a big deal. Because if you're starting to stress every little thing and making a mountain out of like molehills, I mean, you're
Mhm.
going to wear yourself out. That's where burnout comes into the picture.
Well, it's also like we are talking about earlier. Is like you have the longer term goal vision, and then you have the shorter ones. That long term vision, like you don't know the details yet. You can just have the idea. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I want to have that's for example, a big podcast with a few million followers. Great. It doesn't mean you know what the podcast is going to be about. You may know today, right? But you have no idea where that's going to go. And then like the types of followers, right? There's so much that can go into it. And so then when we have expectations of how things are supposed to be, how things are supposed to show up, it's just a path to defeat. Like you're just going to be let down. And so you have to just surrender sometimes. Be like, hey, like, okay, it's just not going to be the way I wanted, but I still am taking those steps towards my goals. And I know we'll get there. It's like tacking, right? When you're sailing, like, okay, we got to go over there to get over there to get over there.
Yeah. And you mentioned faith, and faith is a big one for me, right? Like listening to my intuition and also receiving the signs that I feel are put by God in front of us. Like there's so many serendipitous things that have happened that go beyond coincidence, that I'm like, okay, I am definitely on the right path, right? And I might not know what the next step is going to be, but I have faith that it's going to reveal itself to me, right? And so I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to do those things that I say I'm going to do, right? I'm going to focus on my good habits. I'm going to focus on trying to find ways to move the ball forward. And what I've noticed is that if you put in the effort, eventually that door reveals itself, right? That you're supposed to go through. And even though you might not have seen it at the time, it's like taking the actions brings the opportunities to you, right? And so you got to just have faith that there is a path out there, right? And that if you take the steps, that path will be revealed to you.
Yeah. And once again, this is just a spiritual thing, right? This is just like a how you want to look at life. I mean, I believe that it's all one. We're all one thing. Like everything is one thing. And like because God itself has no limits, then here we are experiencing God subjectively so it can learn more about itself. There's an old Bill Hicks joke, right? Like Kid takes LSD, like, imagine the news headline, "Kid takes LSD and learns that we're all just subjective manifestations of God in order to learn more about itself," or whatever. It's a funny joke. But the point is like, that means when we make a decision, like when we're working towards something, it already is real. Like, the timeline is just in front of us to get there because we're in these 3D carbon material life forms and there's time, right? And we have to just go through that dimension, right? But whether you're looking at this dimension or all the dimensions, like, the goal, the destination is already there. It's just up to us to get there, to stay focused to get there.
Gotcha.
And so,
I
like,
mean,
these
that,
doors open for us because they're supposed to, because we've made the decision to get there.
mhm. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a little abstract, and it's a different belief structure than what I have. But yeah,
It's the same. It's
yeah,
just a different way of saying it.
there's a lot of overlap for sure. The idea is that there is a destiny, right? There is a destiny that is created for you. You just have to walk the steps. Is that kind of it?
Yeah, sure. But it's like we're all here to be ourselves.
Hmm.
Like, nothing is wrong. Nothing
Okay,
is ever wrong.
got it. All right, so let's go on to the next thing,
To
which is
go any deeper would be to totally derail this.
yeah, that's
But I'm saying that nothing is wrong because you got to surrender. Things happen organically. You will get there.
yes.
And it's just sometimes you got to sidestep.
Well, look, this is actually pretty interesting. You know, sometimes, and it's happened to me on this. Like, I have equipment now that we're using, which when I bought it a few years back, I was like, why did I buy this equipment? You know, like, that was so stupid, and I wasted all this money. And here we are using it, right? And like, there's this idea from, or there's this, movie Slumdog Millionaire, right, where he goes through all the hardships that he's had in his life, and and you follow him throughout his life and all the hardships, and then he gets onto the show, right, where it's like, who wants to be a millionaire, and the answers that he needed to become a millionaire were from all the
all the
hardships.
hardships in his life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That
it's
was an intense movie.
yeah. So the last thing, well,
It was
it's
great metaphor.
yeah,
To the point.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one of the last concepts here was to embrace the suck, but it was a weird follow up to, like, there's nothing wrong, because when you are embracing the suck, it does feel like things are wrong.
I've heard people comment on this though, and it's like when you're, for example, these 1% increases, right? When you just do these little things over and over, eventually it makes such a big difference. And there's something about joy being discovered within the suck, right? It's because you're starting to experience the results and the rewards. And suddenly you're like, wow, this doesn't suck anymore because I know what it's doing for me.
Hmm. Yes, that's a growth
Like going to the
mindset.
gym.
That's the idea of a growth mindset, right? It's like, I am going to purposely seek out challenge and resistance, because I know from that is how I get better, is how I grow, right? And so that's the whole idea of a growth mindset. It's like, you've completely changed your perception of hard things, right? Hard things now is what you seek out, because that's going to get you towards your goals. That's going to make you better. That's going to bring the skill sets uh that you have, or that you need, in order to get what you want.
And your brain has developed a relationship with that process
Yes.
and what it does.
Andrew Huberman, he talks a lot about that, right? And then I think there's this girl, or this lady, I'm sorry, Carol Dweck, who wrote a whole book called Growth Mindset, and it's basically, yeah, like, you can rewire the chemical composition of your brain in order to enjoy the process of getting better, which involves hardship and challenge.
And then Joe Dispenza takes that to the next level with them to create the life you've always dreamed of.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, and that's what we're talking about here too. Like, man, when I look back on all of this stuff, and I'm doing exactly what I've been wanting to do for so long. Maybe not, maybe I didn't articulate it, but it feels right. It feels like I'm in the right place, doing the right things. I'm expressing myself in a way that gives me immense fulfillment. I feel like we're moving towards something. I feel like we're bringing the right energy towards ourselves that we want, right? The right people are showing up, and it very much feels like I'm part of something bigger. And it's like, man, I've been looking for this for such a long time.
Dude, yeah, we can have an affirmation moment. I mean, shit. A year ago, I was starting up my podcast in a tiny bedroom in Hawaii. The table was about this big, and I'm right next to the person. I have two webcams facing. I have no producer, but I was like, I'm doing a podcast. And I was like, one day, I'm gonna have a studio, right? One day. And then I was like, one day I'm gonna have a producer too. So we can do a real show. So I can do a real show. That was only a year ago,
Yeah.
dude. I've always wanted like a business partner. I've always wanted someone that cared like I did about certain things to actually do them. Boom. And for 2 years, I was really interested in moving to El Salvador to see what was going on. So it's like I mentioned earlier, like a failure, a setback happens, which has happened recently. I got to zoom out and be like, holy shit, look where I am.
Yeah.
Like, look what's happening. There's no excuse to take the victim route now.
And if
you
you
know?
if you want to go the if you want to bring God into it, right? It's like, okay, God's giving you what you've asked for.
Yeah.
And so what are you gonna do? The ball's in your court now, Jordan. Are you gonna, are you gonna drop it or are you gonna go full steam dribbling ahead,
Yeah, it's gratitude, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you I don't know if God is necessarily spiteful, right? Maybe in some belief systems, but like it's like if I'm not going to be grateful right now, if I'm going to choose that instead of that, that's going to derail me for potentially months,
Mhm.
right? To go that mindset to like suddenly feel bad for my or whatever it is, to decide to go the failure route is going to derail me and it's going to take time to get back in there. Or I can just choose gratitude. Like it's all right, we're going to get through this and get through it and
Mhm.
keep that relationship with God, so to speak, on good terms.
Mhm. Yeah, man, this was a great conversation. It made me grateful, right? And
Right?
this was actually a self-reflective exercise that we just went through, in my opinion, looking back on our journey so far, and going back towards like incremental improvements and working through challenges. Like think about where we're gonna be a month from now, right? If we continue to do this every day as we have been doing, right? Think about where we're gonna be 6 months from now, and think about where we're gonna be a year from now, right? It's like you got to take a second, step back, look at where you were a year ago. A year ago, by the way, I was living in my trailer with my dog and my ex-wife's cat, and I had no idea where I was going to take my life. What I was just praying. I was praying to God, praying to Jesus that a path would be revealed for me, and continuously working on myself and trying to get better every day. And eventually, like I said, that path was revealed. And now I'm here. I'm here, like I said, doing work that I've always dreamed of doing. And so a lot can happen in a year. And so if we continue to work, if we continue to improve, if we continue to prepare and plan and then put forth the actions, I mean, I'm really excited about where we're going to be a year from now. So yeah, I guess that's all I got.
Yeah, the last thing I would say is like now we're here, right? And we're recognizing like, oh, cool, we've achieved some goals, right? And now, like for me lately, it's been remembering that, okay, now I gotta keep focused on what the goals are, right? So I've been reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and his main thing in there in the beginning is like, come up with the goal. How much money is it? How are you gonna make that money? And how long is it gonna be, right? And what are the values in it? What, right? And he basically has you write out a whole page and then he wants you to read it every day, every morning and every night. You read that, you repeat it, you repeat it, you
Well, these are like
repeat it.
affirmations, right?
And mantras.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like mantras. And it's like you just grill that into your consciousness.
Hmm.
And that's what makes it become reality because then your subconscious is dictating your conscious activity based on that, what you're drilling in there.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to make $100 million by 2039 by providing value to others to become more sovereign over their lives.
Hmm.
Right. Which
And
is
so,
mine.
yeah, that goes into like the whole reticular activation system, which I'm not even like that well versed on, but the basic idea is that, you start filling up your consciousness with certain thoughts, and then naturally, like you're looking to reinforce those thoughts, right? And if it sounds like that's very similar concept than what Napoleon Hill was talking about.
Yeah, well, it's the same shit as doom scrolling on Twitter, looking at how the whole world is coming to an end,
Yeah.
right? And then you're going to be you're going to be looking for that
Yes.
anywhere you go. And what a not fun
Confirmation.
existence that is.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I think this was a fantastic show. I think this is a good place to close it up because we have a community call here in 8 minutes.
Are we gonna stream the call? Is this part of it? I forgot.
I don't think so. I think we're doing it in a
We're
Zoom.
just gonna do it Zoom. We're gonna keep it private.
Yeah, and so real quick, there's another thing that I've learned in this process is and it goes back to iterations, but it's also like, things are going to evolve and you're going to figure things out as you go along. And to maintain your flexibility and malleability and double down on what's working and pay attention to what's not working and just go forward from there.
That makes me want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. But I just like, I have 2 young kids, right? And before I had kids, I was lost. And I was literally like lost, just traveling the world, no idea what to do next. I had projects, but they didn't have like substance to them. I mean, maybe they did, but they weren't going anywhere. And I was always like praying for something to come and help me stabilize. Help me something to like, okay, like
Give me an anchor.
give me an anchor to one place at least, to one project, to one goal. Like, I don't even know what the anchor was for. I just needed an anchor. And the children have been the hardest thing in my life I've ever experienced, but it gave me that. It gave me that. And thanks to the anchor now, I'm able to even have this conversation, right? About just focusing on development, self-development mindsets and growth mindsets and all that. Like before that, it wasn't even possible. And so I'm still dealing with this stuff. And so all I'm trying to say is like sometimes things appear to be setbacks. They appear to be like complete life changers in a different direction. But if you approach them at the right way, you look at it as feedback, like it's going to become a tool to become stronger, harder, better, faster, stronger.
Man, that's how I looked at my divorce. And yeah, I can just second what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right. Have a great day, guys. Peace.